dear friends, and welcome again to my podcast. This is Pastor Richard Seafried, and I have the joy and privilege to be able to speak to you each and every week right here from our home in Harrisonburg, Virginia. The title of this podcast is Timely Truths for Troubled Times. I've been taking a break the last week or two on dealing with current events in the news and bringing you a theme that's more in line with the month of June and Father's Day. I'm doing a study of 3 different fathers in the Bible and how they serve as an example to all of us as Christian fathers, the kind of godly men that we need to be. And today I want to read from my brand new book, what was just published by Amazon, Seafried Sermons from Scripture. And this book is filled with outlines of sermons that I've preached over my 44 years of pastoral ministry, and it's especially designed for those that are in full-time Christian ministry as an aid and a help in their preaching and in their pulpit ministry. I'm reading on this Luke 15, the father of the prodigal son. Of all of the parables taught by Christ, none can compare to the story of the prodigal son as it relates to the subject of the family, namely the pains and problems associated with children who come of age and demand their independence. In this Bible study, we're going to look at Luke 15 and glean some powerful and practical truths for this Father's Day from the life of the father of the prodigal son. First, he was a man of prosperity. As I pointed out last week in our study of Job, there's nothing wrong with wealth as long as you put God first. Some of the richest men who ever walked planet Earth were very wealthy. And it seems that this father of the prodigal son in this parable was also a man of great wealth, a man of prosperity. He was successful in business, operating a large farm. He had provided well for his family, as any good father should do. He had many hired servants to help with the farm work, and they were treated fairly and generously. Ironically, it was the thought of how well these hired servants were fed at dinner time that convicted the prodigal son and brought him back home again. Now, some might argue that this man should never have given this boy an early inheritance, that it enabled his behavior and it was a mistake. But the father had no idea his son would squander his portion of the family estate. Fathers provide. That's what they do. They can't control what the kids do with the money. Well, how true that is. Second, not only was he a man of prosperity, he was a man of prayer. While this boy was pursuing the pleasures of sin and, quote, wasting his substance with riotous living, this faithful father was home praying. He was trusting God for the protection and eventual return of his son. How do we know this? Because the scripture says, quote, when he was yet a great way off, the father saw him. He saw him coming because every day he looked down that dusty road by faith, expecting his son's return. It was not hard to imagine what this father's prayer might have sounded like. God, I don't know where he is and what he's doing, but please keep him safe, and in your timing, bring him back home again. Third, he was a man of pardon. It's interesting what specific memories stirred the heart of this wayward boy when he was down in the pig pen feeding the pigs, so terribly hungry that he was actually eating the corn husks. He remembered something. Quote, how many of my father's servants have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger? Yes, it was the thought of the family dinner table, the bounty of the food back home, the advantage even the servants had over his pitiful plight that made him decide to go home again and beg for a position as a servant. So the father in this story is a good example of all fathers because he showed compassion and displayed forgiveness to his wayward son. Quote, he ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. He offered not rebuke, but pardon. He didn't give him a lecture. He gave him love. Notice the grand celebration that took place in the father's house that night. The wayward son was given a new robe, new shoes, probably because his clothes were wore out, a ring for his finger, and a huge meal. Music and dancing filled the house. Fourth, he was a man of peace. The older son was not a bit happy about all this. Someone has joked that the only two people who weren't joyful about the prodigal's return were the elder son and the fatted calf. When the elder son refused to come in from the fields and join the celebration, the father, quote, went out to him. A good father doesn't let unresolved anger or bitterness or jealousy go on in his family. It's very important to note that the father went out after this angry son and gave him good reasons for why this party was appropriate. Fathers need to display the very nature and compassion of God himself and do everything they can to keep peace at home. You know, this thing about the father going out and entreating the older son, it is very instructive of the way God works. It just is an amazing truth. God sought after Adam and Eve when they were hiding in the garden. God went after Cain, who was very angry and jealous toward his younger brother Abel. And God goes after us too. In love and forgiveness, the Lord seeks us out and offers us full forgiveness. That's what the father of the prodigal son did. That's such an example for us to follow. Well, I hope you have a wonderful Father's Day this Sunday. And if you know of a pastor, perhaps your own local church pastor, and are thinking of getting him a gift, I would recommend going on Amazon and buying this book. It'll be a great help to any pastor in ministry that prepares weekly sermons. Well, the Lord bless you. I hope you have a great weekend. And Lord willing, I'll see you back here again in another 10 days or so for another one of my podcasts.